When you think about everything that the Cleveland Browns want to achieve this season, when you think about who the biggest roadblock and the biggest itch on the back of the Cleveland Browns, or the team that you think can ruin it all for the Cleveland Browns this year, it's got to be the Baltimore Ravens, in my opinion. It's their rival. It's the team that they did not beat last year. And it's the team that you really have a strong feeling are going to be competing with you because they have been at the level that the Cleveland Browns are seemingly ascending to or ascended to for a few years before the Browns were there, when we're talking about the championship picture, when we're talking about contending. So it's always a good idea to have a good ideal of what's going on in Baltimore and how their season is looking like it's going to go. And to do that, I'm going to bring in one of the best in the business, OG Engraven Vids. Engraven, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good, man. I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show. And for what I've been doing and looking at the Ravens and everything that's going on, they have a lot of reshuffling going on the offensive side of the ball. I think they have
Mhm.
tried to make some changes there. Sometimes they have had changes forced upon them, and I think it's no bigger than the offensive line. I mean, this was a unit that 3 years ago when they went 14-2 was one of the best in the league. Now they're kind of restructuring and rebuilding that offensive line. How
Mhm.
has that gone? Some of the changes that they're going to do there, how's that offensive line looked? And are you confident in it going into the season?
I'm confident in them in the long haul. In the short term, I think it's gonna be some patchwork here and there. It's gonna be there may be some struggles, some growing pains, because the only time that the starting offensive line has played together was in week 3 of the preseason. They only played together for one drive, and on that one drive, it didn't look the best. Run blocking was fine, but pass blocking it was still a bit of a struggle. So this is why repetition and them continuing to gel together and really get a feel for each other a lot better is going to be big as they head into the season.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those things that you want to keep an eye on, because I think what early last year, the offensive line, or at least in that mid part of the season before you guys went on that run at the end, the offensive line was a big storyline when we were talking about the Ravens, because it just didn't feel like they were giving Lamar enough time, or
Right.
just giving him enough stability in the pocket to do the things that he can do. Now, one of the interesting points I look at with the Ravens, and with Eric DeCosta and how he's built this team, is I think you can point to the offense and say that over the 3 years that they have had Lamar there, and probably the 2 years is it 2 years he started pretty much? Yeah,
Hmm.
2 years that he started. I think you can see the offense not really progressing at the same rate that you would have hoped it would have back in 2018, when you think of like, okay, well, the offensive line, we're going to make that better. The wide receivers are going to make that better. Running back, I do think has gotten better, even though you have taken injuries. J.K. Dobbins not going to play this year. But as far as their plan with the offense, do you think the Ravens have been aggressive enough in their plans to really improve this offense over the last 3 years to get it where it needs to be? Or do you think they have left a lot to be desired in that front?
I think a little bit of both. When it comes to personnel, I feel like they've taken some swings. I wish they would have taken some bigger swings and tried to get like something that a lot of us Ravens fans have really wanted for Lamar Jackson over the past couple of years, certainly after 2019 when he proved like, hey, he can do this thing, was just really getting that guy at the wide receiver position. And getting a mix of a veteran who's truly been a number one guy, who's truly been a top receiver, along with an infusion of youth. I remember a few years back when it came out that the Ravens, they tried to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, but they came up short. And even this year, when it was said that they were interested in Julio Jones, got excited, but I was like, it's not going to get too excited because With a lot of the big names at wide receiver, the Ravens end up coming up short. They even tried to sign Juju Smith-Schuster, offered him more money than the Steelers. He turned them down. They tried to sign T.Y. Hilton this offseason. He turned them down. They checked in with Kenny Golladay. Didn't really give him an offer, though, because his price range was just too high for them. So as far as personnel, they ended up getting Sammy Watkins. And I sort of settling for Sammy Watkins because he was pretty much the only guy out there. But that also leads into what they've done in the front office. And that's been a big part of how we feel like they're going to progress this year, because while they haven't made all the best or top decisions when it comes to personnel, it looks like this year they really try to approach it on a different in a different way and really go after good front office guys and good coaches that have good resumes. So they brought in wide receiver coaches T. Martin and Keith Williams, and these guys are known around the league for their development of some really good wide receivers, guys like Devontae Adams, guys like Tyreek Hill. And one of the reasons why I think Sammy Watkins even came to the Ravens is because he used to work with them as they were his wide receiver coaches. So it's with personnel, they haven't done the best and done everything we've wanted them to do, and they haven't been as aggressive as we wanted them to be. But they took another avenue in doing it through coaching.
It's interesting. And I think one of the more interesting things about the Ravens is also that wide receiving core, right? They have Marquise Brown, they have Sammy Watkins, Rashad Bateman's going to figure into that pretty soon here. You got guys like Duvernay, you guys want to work in the slot. What's going to be that starting rotation and that starting lineup for those wide receivers? Are they going to go with like a Marquise Brown opposite of Sammy Watkins, or are they going to try to use Marquise in a more specialized role and maybe have Bateman out there opposite of him? What have you sensed the plan is for that wide receiver room when it comes to who's going to start, who's going to play where?
Whoever's healthy, whoever can make it out there on the field, because the Ravens, they've been pretty banged up at wide receiver throughout this preseason. But good thing that Hollywood and Sammy Watkins, they both return to practice. So they should be good to go for the week 1 game against the Raiders. Rashad Bateman, our first round pick, he is on injury reserve, short-term injury reserve. So he has to miss at least the first 3 games. Miles Boykin, a 3rd round pick from 2019. He's on short-term injury reserve as well. So he has to miss at least the first 3 games of the season. So yeah, Duvernay and Prochet, they figure to get a lot more playing time this year. But as far as the starters, yeah, it's definitely looking like it's going to be Hollywood Brown and Sammy Watkins as the main go-to guys. And with that, something with the Ravens, what it seems as if they are looking, well, the type of receivers that they have, especially when you talk about the guys that figure to be the top 3 for now, with Hollywood, with Sammy Watkins, and with Devin Duvernay. These are guys that they can move around. So Hollywood doesn't have to just be an outside receiver. You can put him inside as well. Same with Sammy Watkins. Same with Duvernay. Prochet, he's primarily an inside guy. We'll see if they give him some matchups on the outside too. I figure they give him some, but not nearly as much as the other 3 that we listed. And then Tylan Wallace. Tylan Wallace, similar to Prochet, he is a big 50-50 guy. And it just, the big thing about the receivers this year that we're going to be looking for as Ravens fans is just how they get their different guys involved. And if they can really use their guys, they can play them to their strengths, because that's something that has been, especially last year. And last year it was a weird offseason. But that's one of the biggest things that we'll be looking for this year. If the Ravens, the offensive coordinator, Lamar, the receivers, they play these guys to their strengths and they use them to the best of their abilities.
Yeah, it's going to be, again, interesting. Again, the injury that happened to JK, it's really unfortunate that happened in preseason, but it does change up how that running backs room. How they're going to replace JK's production, I know Gus Edwards probably going to see a lot more carries, which is good. I've been wanting Gus to get more carries for a while there. He's always put up really good averages when it comes to yards per carry. But what else do you guys have behind him? Are the Ravens confident in what they have behind him? You know, is that going to affect their willingness to run? Because they're usually like 3 or 4 deep at running back. Plus,
Mhm.
with Lamar Jackson and what he brings to that run game.
Right.
Right now, the only two names I really know of that have been productive in the NFL are what Lamar and Gus. So is that going to change anything on how they plan for the season?
Now, yeah, with J.K. Dobbins, that was a big blow because we were like, felt like we were like stacked at the running back position, and all of a sudden, boom, you lose the guy who was going to be the top guy. I feel like with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, they were like a 1A and 1B. J.K. was the starter, but Gus Edwards was not a backup. But with that being said, now Gus is going to be the guy. But also behind him, an undrafted rookie free agent from last year, Tyson Williams. He made the squad, so he's going to be on the team getting carries at running back too. And Justice Hill, who has so far has had a bit of an underwhelming career so far. He's also had a lack of opportunities too because he's always had Gus Edwards in front of him. He had Mark Ingram in front of him. Then, of course, Lamar, he took a lot of carries too. So Gus really didn't get much piece of the pie. But he returned to practice yesterday. So he figures to be a part of the run game too. Now, about the Ravens being confident in their running backs, Harbaugh did come out the other day and said, hey, we are confident in our running backs. We're confident in the guys that we got on the roster. So what that tells me is that they are going to look to sign somebody because the last time we heard that from somebody in Ravens front office was Eric DeCosta. And he said that he was insulted when fans talked about the Ravens receivers, when fans complained about the Ravens receivers. He said it's insulting that you would say that stuff about our wide receivers. Then what did he do? He turned around and drafted Rashad Bateman and drafted Tylan Wallace. So I definitely think that the Ravens are still going to look to add somebody in the backfield.
Definitely. All right, let's switch gears to the defensive side of the ball. It's not as interesting because the Ravens are just always so good defensively from year to year, and it doesn't look like it's going to change, right? You got Marcus Peters coming back. You got Marlon Humphreys coming back, at least for this year. You know that secondary is going to be fine, and then the defensive line is good. The big question, I think, is about Patrick Queen, who, you know, depending on where you read about Patrick Queen, he's either had a standout rookie year or he was one of the worst linebackers in football. Like it really varies that greatly to him. I think he got a vote for all rookie, off defensive rookie or defensive rookie of the year. He got some votes for that last year, but Pro Football Focus had him as like the worst linebacker in football. It is an interesting spectrum of opinions when it comes to Patrick Queen. How has he looked in the regular, not in the regular season, in the preseason? And also, like, I noticed, at least when I was watching a little bit of the Ravens last year, when I would see Patrick Queen, I think probably where some of that Pro Football Focus grade comes from is, you know, he might not be diagnosing things correctly, or he might not be guessing correctly, but he was also in year one. How has he looked like he has progressed in that, his anticipation?
So far so good. So far so good because in the preseason, he has been blowing up screens, making some nice open field tackles, just doing everything that you want to see from your starting inside linebacker. Now, yeah, last year you're right. It was depending on who you talk to, they say either did really good or did really bad. But Patrick Queen, I think he was right in the middle because we got to also take into account what last year was. He was a rookie. First round draft pick coming into a Ravens defense that is very, very, very complex. And then you put on top of that, you don't have an off season, so you don't have a training camp. We didn't get any all this stuff we're getting this year. They didn't get it last year. So this is essentially almost like a redo for a lot of the guys who were rookies last season. But with Patrick Queen, he led the team in tackles, and depending on how you look at that, that could be a good thing or bad thing. But it's a linebacker, so it's usually a good thing. Those are usually the guys who you want to lead in tackles because you definitely don't want it to be somebody in the secondary because that would mean that people are getting to that second level. But anyway, with Patrick Queen, so far he's looked pretty good this preseason. He's looked a lot more decisive because that was something that last year he struggled a bit with, just not knowing, just sometimes being out of place, just sometimes a little bit of over pursuit sometimes, and just rookie mistakes. And now with him having had an off season, him being more understanding of what the defense assignments are, this should be a much better year for Patrick Queen. That's why I really do think that he's gonna go off this year, because last year again it was pretty good for him overall. He did have some lapses in here, especially in pass coverage. That's where he definitely needs to take another step forward. But this year with the offseason, I think that will make the world of a difference for PQ.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what he does there. I think the last question I have for you, INGRAVEN, is when it comes to this season, the 2021 season, a lot's riding on it. I want to know one thing that Raven fans are most worried about crashing their chances this year in 2021, and one thing that gives them the most confidence that is not Lamar Jackson, because I know the answer is Lamar Jackson, but let's make this a little bit more interesting. Take away the most obvious answer that is not Lamar Jackson.
Something that could just ruin their plans this year. One, I mean, it is a sort of a easy answer, but it'll be health. Health is always something that you got to worry about. But another thing too would be the offensive line. If they look like they looked in preseason, even though we saw a small sample size, so we can't go off of that. But if that's how they look, then that will be a big yikes. So the offensive line, and also playoff time. In the playoffs, every single playoff game, they come out unprepared. They come out with this lackluster effort, and they come out like they just don't know what's going on. It happened since 2018. It happened in 2019. Even last year in the win against the Titans, it happened then because they went down 10-0 before they came back and beat Tennessee. But that would probably be the biggest thing. Is the playoff and just the lack of preparation, it seems, or some people may look at it as them being overconfident and them just really not even paying the opponent that much mind, or not paying them enough mind. So those would be three things that I feel like could really derail the Ravens season. Now, one thing that could give us a boost of confidence going forward this season that a lot of people may not be talking about enough, or may just not know about, I would say the wide receiver coaches, because with T. Martin and Keith Williams, because with those guys, obviously everybody knows it's no secret that the Ravens, they do a pretty good job drafting, developing players with their front office, with free agency, with signing contracts, with cap space. They do a good job with that. But one of their biggest struggles consistently through the entirety of their franchise that hasn't even been around that long, it has been at wide receiver. It's always been at wide receiver. The Ravens they have not been able to consistently hit on wide receiver. So they always going out getting this guy, signing that old veteran, signing this guy. And they try to draft some guys too, but a lot of times it just hasn't worked out. So now with them taking the different approach, instead of actually taking a double approach, because they did draft a Rashad Bateman and he was a really good prospect. And I expect him to do really good. But with them actually getting some coaches that have great resumes, with them adding those two, that could pay dividends for the Ravens in a major way, with really getting the most out of their wide receivers, because that's something that they never did before. They never really got those guys on the coaching staff to really help take their receivers to the next level.
There it is. Some great insight from INGRAVEN Vids. Make sure you guys subscribe to his channel, youtube.com/INGRAVEN Vids. Anything you want to say before we head out, man?
I appreciate you having me on again, man. And this season, it's going to be a good one. So I can't wait.
It's definitely going to be up there. It's definitely, especially that 2 games in 3 weeks. Can't wait for that one.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Browns, Steelers, Browns. That's just, well.
Yeah, that's going to be something.
Almost don't want to play your starters in that Chicago game, because you don't want to risk nothing like against an NFC team when you have 3 division games back to back that, theoretically could determine the playoffs, the division. Pretty much everything's going to be on the line projectedly at that point. Those games are in November. That's crazy that they scheduled it like that.
Yeah, it's going to be wild, man.
Yeah, it's going to be back to back to back, and the Browns get a bye week in between while y'all get the Steelers. That's just it's unfortunate. for the Ravens. But I want to thank everybody for watching and have a great day. Have a good night.